Hey, good morning, everybody. I literally feel like I'm living in bizarro world. If you look at the markets out there, it's as if we're at the genesis of, this new age and, tremendous amount of technological growth and health and optimism. And yet I look around at the headlines of the real systemic changes that are going on in this world, and the markets are totally mispriced. The risk involved in what is coming. China tariffs alone, $325 billion of tariffs. It's not going to directly affect China. It's going to directly affect the American economy. You pay the tariffs, not China. The end consumer pays the price, not China. This is an ill-conceived policy, but it's just merely a cover for a larger struggle between China, which is this rising country that is, three times the size, three times the population as the United States has, and about similar size economy, and now they've created their own sphere of influence with Russia and India and all the Asian trading partners and all this other stuff. And China has been pushing forward its foreign policy through business, investing in infrastructure in countries and all this other stuff, and then, turning us all around. And the United States continues to play the same old playbook of creating debt and death. And that's where I'm most focused on, and I have been focused on, that Iran is this nexus where the Anglo-American Zionist banking cartel wants to destroy basically all the moderate Middle Eastern countries. I've put many clips. In fact, the whole end of this video is going to be about all the reasons why any war that starts with Iran is going to be a false flag war, that these neo-Zionists are going to try to frame Iran or other nations to get us into a war with them. And yesterday was a pretty sneaky idea where I've done many videos talking about how the United States policymakers wanted to create a false flag. I did the Seymour Hersh article talking about the last final days of Dick Cheney in office, talking about creating Iranian PT boats and putting Navy SEALs on them and then starting to attack our ships so we could cause a war. And yet what happened yesterday was that apparently the Saudi oil tankers and pipelines and infrastructure were attacked by a coordinated drone strike. Well, anybody can make a drone and put a bomb on it and then blow it into their own people. Saudi Arabia can do it on their own and say, oh, Iran did it. The United States could do it. Israel could do it. Anybody can blow up a thing and create a drone and frame anybody. And I just found it interesting that the Iranian foreign minister specifically said that the United States was looking to create a false flag operations. Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif on Tuesday warned against the so-called false flag operations that the United States and its Gulf allies wish to attribute to Iran during the recent tanker attack. So Iran said, we didn't attack them. This is a false flag. They basically shot themselves in the foot, and they're looking to start a war. As a result, I've already talked about the USS Lincoln moving in there. I mean, I would expect if they're going to push for a war, they're going to want military men dying to rouse the American people against Iran. And I've given the incredible history of how we have messed with Iran since 1953, the Operation Ajax, then funding Saddam in an 8-year Iran-Iraq war where we essentially backed Saddam to kill 1 million Iranian men during that war. And then all the other things that we've done to Iran, sanctions and all this other stuff, they want Iran, and this is what they've been working for. And then right after, they pushed the USS Lincoln in there. They had these little teeny infrastructure attacks on Saudi Arabia, trying to frame Iran. But something bigger is coming. And what I'm trying to warn you is that the combination of this global tariff, already starting to come down, the Federal Reserve already pausing. They know that the next recession's coming. We have trade tensions, and then we're going to have a hot war with Iran that could drag in China, Russia. You've already got all this action that's going down in Venezuela, which has the most oil reserves out there, even though it's more sulfur oil than the light sweet crude that we get out of Saudi Arabia. But what I'm telling you is that this is, like, if you looked at the months before World War II, I don't think World War II had as much lead up on a global scale on so many fronts. Yeah, there might have been military tensions, but we're talking economic tensions on top of a global generational debt-based fiat Ponzi scheme that we were barely dragged out of in 2008, and they've doubled the debt. So whatever things you think were wrong in 2008, it's twice as bad. So while you're looking at Dow, I don't know, 25,000 now, and during the 2008 financial crisis, it went down to 10,000. Right off the bat, that's 15,000, or, for 50%, 60% of the Dow. That's, to me, is suspect to overpricing what we have in the economy in terms of risk on a systemic basis. And I don't think it's going to stop at 10,000. I think it could even go lower than that. And this is where gold and silver are going to come out. No, we're not going to see it before, but I'm telling you, once things get really scary, once the Dow loses 5,000, 10,000, trust me, folks, people are going to file down Exeter's pyramid into the most liquid and most secure assets, and they're going to try to sell out of stocks and get into cash, only to realize that the Federal Reserve and all these other guys out there are going to print trillions upon trillions of dollars, destroying the value of that currency.
The United States can pay any debt it has because we can always print money to do that. So there is zero probability of default.
This is the United States government. First of all, you never have to default because you print the money. I hate to tell you, okay? So there's never a default.
And we can guarantee cash benefits as far out and at whatever size you like, but we cannot guarantee their purchasing power.
And that's where the hyperinflation happens. And then what? Everybody's going to go clamor into gold. Well, guess what? There's the gold price is going to, double, triple, who knows, whatever. And then the really smart people are going to figure out, silver has all the benefits of gold. It's liquid. It's divisible. It has industrial uses that government gold doesn't have. It's the second most versatile commodity in the world. It's vastly under cheap. It's cheap on a relative basis to gold. That's when they're going to break the back of these manipulations that are going on there. So I'm a believer, I am into silver because I know all these things are going to bad happen, and that there's one best place to be in, and that's physical silver. And that's where I'm trying to get people, up until this happens, I'm going to be pounding the table as hard as I can, putting out all these videos, trying to get people to take action and recognize that the world is going to be screwed up, but your world doesn't have to be. If you simply recognize that things are not going to be priced at these levels anymore, whatever stocks, housing, cars, guitars, whatever things that you think that you have of value, half of it is going to be gone, if not all of it. You don't need to be a market scientist to realize that things that cannot go on forever won't, and this won't. And silver is just merely the vessel of getting into an undervalued asset in this paradigm that transfers its wealth into the next paradigm because it's a real tangible value. And when they print trillions upon trillions of dollars and hyperinflation happens, more money, the velocity is going to speed up onto smaller and smaller things that actually matter. And it's going to come into terms of food and fuel and things that, like money, like silver, where all those things are going to become tremendously overvalued. Relative to what we're paying today. And you're going to see something like Venezuela where your entire monthly wages may go just for food. Forget about fuel. And that's why I think owning physical silver is the best way of transferring and protecting yourself and preparing for whatever comes, because there might be financial opportunities afterwards. There might be, you may have to, sell off or make debts or make payments or whatever. Silver is always going to be there. You cannot trust the dollar. You can't trust the banking system. You can't trust any marketable digital illusion of wealth, and you need to be in physical assets.
None of the Shah's comments raised hackles like his blast at the American Jewish lobby. Its influence, he claimed, went all the way to the top.
Surely, Your Majesty, you're not telling me that the Jewish lobby in the United States pulls the strings of the presidency?
Not entirely, but I think even a little too much, even for Israel interests.
You think the Jewish lobby in the United States is too powerful for the interests of Israel?
I think so. Sometimes they are disserving the interests of Israel because they're pushing around too many people.
Well, why would the President of the United States pay attention to that lobby?
They are strong.
Strong in what sense?
They are controlling many things.
Controlling what?
Newspapers, medias,
Your Majesty.
banks, finances, and I'm going to stop there.
Well, now wait just a second. You really do believe that the Jewish community in the United States is that powerful? They make the media reflect their view of foreign policy?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
They do not report, we do not report honestly?
Don't mix things, please. I don't say the media. I say in the media they have people. Not the entire media. Some newspapers will only reflect their views, yes.
No. The New York Times, for instance, is owned by the Salzburger family, who are Jewish. Are you suggesting that the New York Times is biased in its treatment of the question of Zionism, Israel's existence, the United States' relationship with the Arab world?
I will have to put all the articles of the New York Times written on this subject and draw the conclusion. You can put this to the computer and it will answer you.
What you're saying is that, yes, you do believe.
Well, let's wait for the answer of the computer.
Washington Post?
The same.
The networks?
Less.
I must say you are speaking with your characteristic candor.
Yes, if you like. I try to be candid. I have always been.
How many press are here? Anyway, there was a meeting among the items considered and rejected, which is why the New Yorker did not publish it on grounds that it wasn't accepted. One of the items was why not? There was a dozen ideas proffered how to trigger a war. The one that interested me the most was, why don't we in our shipyard build 4 or 5 Iranian boats that look like Iranian PT boats, put Navy SEALs on them with a lot of arms, and the next time one of our boats goes through the Straits of Hormuz, start a shoot-up. Might cost some lives, and it was rejected because you can't have Americans killing Americans. But that's the level of stuff we were talking about.
I frankly think that crisis initiation is really tough. And it's very hard for me to see how the United States president can get us to war with Iran. Which leads me to conclude that if, in fact, compromise is not coming, that the traditional way of America gets to war is what would be best for U.S. interests. Some people might think that Mr. Roosevelt wanted to get us into World War II, as David mentioned. You may recall we had to wait for Pearl Harbor. Some people might think Mr. Wilson wanted to get us into World War I. You may recall he had to wait for the Lusitania episode. Some people might think that Mr. Johnson wanted to send troops to Vietnam. You may recall he had to wait for the Gulf of Tonkin episode. We didn't go to war with Spain until the until the Maine exploded. And may I point out that Mr. Lincoln did not feel he could call out the Federal Army until Fort Sumter was attacked, which is why he ordered the commander at Fort Sumter to do exactly that thing which the South Carolinians had said would cause an attack. So if, in fact, the Iranians aren't going to compromise, it would be best if somebody else started the war. One can combine other means of pressure with sanctions. I mentioned that explosion on August 17th. We could step up the pressure. I mean, look, people, Iranian submarines periodically go down. Someday one of them might not come up. Who would know why? We can do a variety of things if we wish to increase the pressure. I'm not advocating that, but I'm just suggesting that this is not a either-or proposition of, it's just sanctions has to succeed or other things. We are in the game of using covert means against the Iranians. We could get nastier at that.
I guess my question is, how many times do we have to prove that these people are blowing up people now? Never mind if they get a nuclear weapon. When do we send them an airmail message to Tehran?
That old Beach Boys song, Bomberan. Bom, 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 bom. Anyway.
What do you mean support negotiation? What are we going to negotiate about? What I would say is, listen, you see that desert out there? I want to show you something. You pick up your cell phone, even at traveling rates. You pick up your cell phone, and what are they called?
Roaming charges.
Roaming charges. You pick up your cell phone and you call somewhere in Nebraska and you say, okay, let it go. So there's an atomic weapon goes over ballistic missiles in the middle of the desert that doesn't hurt a soul. Maybe a couple of rattlesnakes and scorpions or whatever. And then you say, see, the next one is in the middle of terrorism. So we mean business.
General Wesley Clark talking about this Zionist plan.
Often when there is dissent expressed in the United States against policies of the Israeli government, people here are called anti-Semitic. What is your response to that as an Israeli Jew?
Well, it's a trick. We always use it. When from Europe somebody is criticizing Israel, then we bring up the Holocaust. When in this country people are criticizing Israel, then they are anti-Semitic. And it's very easy to blame people who criticize certain acts of the Israeli government as anti-Semitics and to bring up the Holocaust and the suffering of the Jewish people, and that justify everything we do to the Palestinians.
To have the United States devastate and destabilize and destroy all of the Middle East except for our allies so that Israel can have their Greater Israel Project.
And by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, are we still going to war with Iraq? And he said, oh, it's worse than that. This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
There are a number of people that want a war.
But is there a really vital threat coming from Iran as you see it?
I don't know. I don't. Look, Iran is not... Iran, I mean, during the Cold War, with due respect, Soviet Union had thousands of weapons. They could have destroyed us in an afternoon, and we could have done the same thing. I was around during the Cuban Missile Crisis. That was genuinely terrifying. But Iran doesn't frighten me, and I don't think it should frighten the American people. They don't have a bomb. They haven't made a decision to build one. They don't have the means to deliver one. And the Israelis have 300 atomic bombs. I mean, who presents the existential threat to whom?
I'll tell you one thing, unlike America, Israel seems to be able to fight wars very quickly. What is your secret? Because we don't seem to have the hang of that.
The secret is that we have America.
Nah.
And America, you see, the point is that Israel...
My name is Donald Trump, and I'm a big fan of Israel. And frankly, a strong prime minister is a strong Israel. And you truly have a great prime minister. In Benjamin Netanyahu, there's nobody like him. He's a winner. He's highly respected. He's highly thought of by all. And people really do have great, great respect for what's happened in Israel. So vote for Benjamin. Terrific guy, terrific leader, great for Israel.
The secret is that we have America.
These are the same Zionists that lied about nuclear weapons in Iraq that had nothing to do with 9/11.
Saddam is hell-bent on achieving atomic bombs, atomic capabilities as soon as he can. There is no question whatsoever that Saddam is seeking and is working and is advancing towards the development of nuclear weapons. No question whatsoever. And there is no question that once he acquires it, history shifts immediately.
As a Prime Minister of Israel, has Iran crossed your red line?
Well, the way I would say it, David, is they're in the red zone. You know, they're in the last 20 yards, and you can't let them cross that goal line. You can't let them score a touchdown because that would have unbelievable consequences, grievous consequences for the peace and security of us all, of the world, really. You have to put greater pressure on them. You have to upgrade the sanctions. And they have to know that if the sanctions and diplomacy fails, they'll face a credible military threat. That's essential. Nothing else will do the job. And it's getting closer.
Who benefits? I tell you who benefits. Israel.
מה קורה? הדבר העיקרי, קודם כל, לתת להם מכות, לא רק מכות כל כך מכינות, שהמחיר יהיה כבד מצום. כרגע המחיר לא כבד מצום. גם זו התקפה רבת היקף על הרשות הפלסטינית. תביא אותם לפחד שהכל מתמוטט.
ואז, רגע, אבל אז השוק העולם יגיד מה, אתם כובשים? אתה לא מפחד מהעולם, ביבי.
במיוחד היום עם אמריקה, אני יודע מה זה אמריקה. אמריקה זה דבר שאפשר להזיז אותו בקלות, להזיז לכיוון הנכון.
הם אומרים שהם בעדינו, אבל כאילו...
לא יחמיאו לו.
אז כשאני אומר, אנחנו עושים איזה משהו, אז הם...
יש שווה, אז נניח שהם אומרים משהו. אז אמרו, 80% מהאמריקאים תומכים בנו. זה אבסורד, יש לנו שם תמיכה כזאת, ואנחנו אומרים, מה נעשה עם הממשל ההוא היה פרו-פלסטיני בצורה קיצונית. לא פחדתי להתעמת שם. לא פחדתי להתעמת עם קלינטון. לא פחדתי להתעמת עם הרוב. בלאו הכי את המחיר הבינלאומי אני משלם. אז עדיף לקבל תמורה. תמורה להגנה.
They get us to spend our money on wars that benefit them. They even tried it with the USS Liberty.
The Israelis and the Egyptians were going to war, and we were sent to the Med to listen.
We helped the mastermind the Six-Day War. The Israeli had their key defense people. We had our key defense people, and they all sat around for about a week. They plotted, planned what was going to happen in that war.
Didn't expect to be near a shooting war.
National Security had the tape of the pilots, Israeli pilots, talking to their controller, saying it's an American ship, and the controller says, attack it. People don't realize they napalmed that ship.
Big holes like this were blown in the rails around the gun mounts in front, and the men were thrown up in the air, and
that whole front part of the ship was red, running with blood.
And we got a message out. And it said, under attack, believed to be Arabs. Got one message back, help is on the way.
For the first time in history, our Commander-in-Chief demanded that U.S. forces abandon a mission to rescue a nearby U.S. Navy vessel, then under heavy deliberate attack by hostile military forces.
Israel attacked a U.S. naval vessel to sink it, to blame it on Egypt so that we would end up fighting for them. This is no different. So we have this nation that is backed by the Rothschild central bank money, that has this media complex that they own and control, that has the politicians in their back pocket.
The secret is that we have America.
And yet they bleed this country to death with wars that do not serve us, with debts that we end up having to pay them, to go fight nations that have no strategic interest in us, and then have a legitimate gripe against us. The only hope I see is for people to spread this information so that we can prevent this war from ever happening.